And here we are. This is the part 2 of episode 24. If you haven't heard heard part 1, please do that, because we're jumping in mid-sentence here, or hopefully between paragraphs, but definitely mid-thought stream. I had to break it into 2 parts because of the app on my phone that I'm using to make these videos to transfer the podcast, which these episodes have been up on the podcast for 5.5 some odd years. And I'm just now putting them up on YouTube because people have asked me to do that, because it's super easy to binge listen via the YouTube app on the phone. So there you go. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoy part 2 of episode 24 with Wiz Garber. At the time, he was Wiz Garber. Now he's Daniel Garber. Keep listening to the Esoterinerd podcast, and when you get to episode 77, then you'll get some light on that.
The interesting thing to me is how it's a meditation. It's a yoga of a kind, because you're doing an operation. You have your gear in front of you, and you're kind of sitting on a stool, and you really you can't just walk away from it. You have to monitor it. You have to supervise, and so you're sitting there, and there may not be any music or anything, but you're kind of staring at this thing, and it's doing really slow stuff, and you're trying to understand what it's doing, and you kind of zone out.
Yeah.
As you're staring at this thing that's taking hours to do. And it's like a meditation.
Yeah. Like a good kitchen, a good cook who puts their heart in what they're cooking is doing kind of a form of alchemy.
So the process that you're doing, you're meditating on, and it's changing you.
Yeah.
It's transforming you.
Yeah.
Your intention is very important, and what time of astrologically, that all has to be taken into account for the operation that you're doing. Then you charge everything up once you have it produced.
There's a certain hubris in the higher grades of Golden Dawn practitioners, where you read about how McGregor Mathers was a Capricorn but decided to be an Aries instead. So he went into the vault and just rewired the universe so that the moment that he was born, there was a different stellar ray, and so the precedent was established that as an initiate of the second order of the Golden Dawn, you're completely immune to any kind of astrological influence, and you can just customize it to whatever kind of working you're doing.
Really?
But just to satisfy the nerds that insist that the zodiacal, is still as important, we would have rituals where we would consecrate, a Venusian talisman while Venus was at a certain place in the sky. But the idea was just, why not just add an extra kick to it, even though obviously as adepts we could just go into the vault and bring in whatever ray we wanted to. And it starts in the grade of Zelator, at least where I came from. I don't know about other orders, but in the grade of Zelator, second grade, you get the BRH. And it's like, so what does the BRH do? It's like, well, the LBRP that you learned in Neophyte, that gets rid of any unwanted things floating around in your microcosm. And then once you master that, then you get the BRH, which does the same thing to the macrocosm. It just gets rid of any, actual spirits or entities in the physical space, and it also renders null any kind of astrological influence or aspects. So like if it's like, uh-oh, moon's void of course, uh-oh, Mercury retrograde, uh-oh, and now all the, astrologers are running around superstitious and mad and flailing their hands about like victims. Magicians are taking responsibility for the creation of the universe in present time, and able to pull whatever ray they can out of the center of their heart, because that's where it all comes from anyway, and it's all reflected on the outer edge of the sky. But then in our old Tree of Life diagram, we have it backwards, where we put Malkut in the middle, and we have the outer edge of the sky way out here, and we say that that the source is out here, and that the ultimate creation is in the middle. But really, the source is the ultimate creation, and it's projecting it all back out. The constellations aren't really there; they're in our heads. Basically, is what it comes down to. It's in our collective consciousness, and our collective unconscious, and our history.
Which is very a yoga point of view.
Yeah.
That it's all subjective.
Fun. Oh, here's some fun stuff. This is one of a kind well, no, it says number 10, but it's temple copy. So like this wasn't something that we would, if people took it, we'd be like, hey, bring it back. And I wrote this, but I wrote it based on years of observation. It was put together based on the Watchtower ceremony, and it was infused with a bit of drama, a bit of psychodrama, and a bit of Catholicism over here, and a bit of melodrama over. No, it was beautifully conducted, beautifully, and we did it monthly, and it was called the Magical Healing Eucharist. And honestly, I miss it. And there was a point where I was the only. Well, I wasn't the only. It seemed like I was the only one who was like wanting to do it. But I also hated like having to go out there and do stuff and drive out there and not spend time with Janie when so I was kind of like, okay, can someone else cover this? I mean, we should keep them going. And then finally it was like, well, we're going to stop having them. And I was like, don't stop having them, And so I was kind of heartbroken about that. But I know that it is performed in small group settings around the country, maybe even outside the country. But yeah, this is something that if we had 3 people who were into it and we're down to rehearse for a couple hours, I'd love to put this on for a group of a few people and just utterly and shamelessly rip it off. Because I helped write it, I mean, my DNA is in this too. And it was sincerely conducted. My dad was, he was very open about, both my parents were very open about sexual stuff when I was young, and everything else. And so Tantra, the idea of all these different energies and forces and things that you can, and there's all the different philosophies and ways that people approach it, the way Crowley approached it. I mean, I kind of ended up learning a lot about Crowley from my mom just through like stories that she had picked up over the years. She was kind of like, she was into it. I had her old Thoth deck. It was her favorite deck. My dad was the one that was like, stay away from Crowley. My mom was like, they tried cocaine once just to see what the hubbub was about. And then afterward, my dad was like, okay, I understand why it's addictive. And my mom was like, yeah, me too. Let's get some more. And my dad was like, no. So he was kind of the adult, and my mom was kind of the, yeah, let's do it again. I want to do Crowley and cocaine. And my dad was like, traditional Golden Dawn, no cocaine, and so I went with what my dad said, but I love my mom, and I have her spirit in me, and so that's why I seem like a weirdo, is I'm a mixture of these two very different people. I think everybody in the world can say that, though. That's evolution, though. That's you take an occultist Buddhist who was born in Shanghai, and you take a Dutch white girl from De Wardy, raised by a Christian and a scientist, and then you put them together, and then something is born, and then you kill both of them, and what do you get? Well, you get me, I guess. And I don't know what that is yet, because I'm still in the middle of trying to figure that out and form it, and I don't know when I know that eventually, if I live long enough, this will be the 37 period. This will be how I was in 2015, and that will have led to something else, and I don't know what that is. I have no idea what that is, and so it's still unfolding. The DNA still hasn't expressed itself. It's still at a certain point in its expression. And I think part of it is that to ride the axis of time-space and be in present time. Because you can easily trail back way back here. But I think one thing to keep in mind is that our memories are imperfect facsimiles of sensory experiences of a world that we're not actually even in, even when we're in present time. So there's not even a prayer of being in reality when you're trailing off in your own memories. And that's what isolates people and takes God energy and separates it from God energy so that it feels sad and isolated in the corner until it dies and then says, oh, thank God, oh, it's Jesus or Krishna or whoever they're expecting. And then they're reunited with the source. What was I talking about? Fuck. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you were on a roll there.
Yeah, no, it's good.
You should be doing a YouTube video.
So here, let me show you in the temple. So, and there's all this music and stuff, and some of the music I use in the podcast is actually from the Eucharist. So
also a little edited piece out of the Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically they'd all come in and do, round and round. Everybody walk different ways and go different things, and there's a different element. I don't have the 4 elements as they are in a traditional Golden Dawn neophyte setting here right now. It's a severed rose, which I, on principle, don't do unless it's fake. I leave the roses in the ground. That's my religion. And so there'd be a cup of wine, which is funny because you take an oath, and the original oath, I will not allow myself to be placed under the influence of someone else through drugs or alcohol, and then at the end they're like, okay, drink this wine. And so I'm thinking, is this a test? And then everybody else drinks the wine, and everybody seems to be fine with it, and I was like, all right, whatever. Didn't I just take an oath not to drink? Well, okay, sure. And so anyway, then there's the red lamp, and then there's the paten of bread and salt. And and this is derived from the neophyte initiation. At the end, you commune with the four elements. So this entire ritual is just an expounding of one part of the neophyte initiation. So we'd have people come in on Sunday morning as if this were a religious thing. And then, we'd have everybody come into the Isis shrine and then kneel down, and then, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie, and so on. Sancta Maria, Sancta Dei Genitrix, ora pro nobis. Sancta Virgo Virginum, ora pro nobis. Causa nostra laetitiae, ora pro nobis. Vas insigne deditionis, ora pro nobis. And it gets fun because there's like Stella Matutina is one of the titles of Mary. And so we go through all this, this Catholic shit.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and also a title of Satan. So it gets confusing. But anyway, and Venus, obviously. So then we do this one. There's some other stuff. And more of that in that vibration stuff. Largely inspired by, the Tridentine and Norbertine Catholic masses. But then, well, you've heard me talk about by now, you're starting to be able to visualize a guy in red here, right? And he became Greek Orthodox in protest to all these fucking Catholics, And so then he's like, you're going to tell me that my lineage isn't real? And so I was like, So I became Russian Orthodox Catholic. So it was like recognized by, it was like, when the Roman Catholics make Greek Orthodox churches, it's rude, and the Greek Orthodox don't appreciate it. They're like, "Thank you, but why don't you leave that to us?" But when Russia went communist and they started shooting archbishops, and the only ones they'd let live were the ones that would write letters and sign them and seal them to all the other churches in around the world that were from the Russian Orthodox, saying that they needed to embrace the ideals of communism and preach it. There was a severage, there was a split, a schism, if you will, between all the churches within Russia that had guns to their heads and all the other Russian churches in the world that had now no funding now. And so then there was a Jesuit who was Russian down over by LAX, and he was running a Catholic church and nobody was coming to it. And the neighborhood was Russian, and they were all going to these like Jehovah's Witness churches and stuff. So he just was like, So he built a Russian Orthodox church inside of the Catholic Church and just started performing the Russian Orthodox liturgy, but largely in English, so people could start to transition into the culture who were coming in from Russia. And it did well, and that was the church that I joined, and I sang in their choir for many years. And that's when I was reciting out of the book. That's where that was from.
How old were you?
I was in my 20s. It was a part of my becoming an adept process. It was basically when L. Ron Hubbard had exhausted his brain and given everybody all the actual good advice that he had, and then they kept asking questions. He was like, all right, there's aliens, like this. So he came up with this other shit out of his ass. So similarly, after we had run out of grade material and I had learned all this shit, then the cult leader said, well, you need to join the Catholic Church, and so I was trying to find a way to reconcile the cult leader with the revolutionary, with the guy that was standing over here. So not the guy that stood here, he just has a heart of gold, but his teacher. But this was the guy that taught me Catholicism. He would take me to mass and stuff. And meanwhile, over here was, in blue, was a guy named. He was the only person I trusted in the Second Order. And back then I wasn't in the Second Order. I was in Portal. I was just watching it every month, and participating as a lesser officer that would carry the elements around. And then he drove me to my initiation, and then I was initiated. And then I came into the Second Order and found out about the darkness on the other side of the veil, where everybody was obsessed with bellum, this idea, the Latin word for war. At one point I had bellum written on my sword, and it's a single-edged sword which is inappropriate symbolism for a Golden Dawn, for a Rosicrucian sword. And I tell people that's because mine is just war. I don't have peace on my sword. And so that was the Second Order in 2001. And so left in the heat of all that. He was a vegetarian, and he was a good person. And he, like me, was trying to do this flow reversal, this tantric flow reversal, and be an asshole for a change, like to have a spine, because that's the kind of stuff the cult leader was saying. And so then he finally had it, and he left. And so I went over to his house, and he let me in because we were friends. And I sat there and I talked to him. We talked about nothing to do with the temple at all. And then eventually I was like, so there's people on their way here. And he said, figured there were. And he said, how much time do I have? And I said, I don't know. And he's like, okay. So I'm going to go. And I was like, you sure? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. And then he left, got in his car, and pulled out just as... And from Canada arrived, and he just waved and drove away in his Honda Civic. And I never saw him again. So they tapped me, and I came up and put on the blue. And I stood there staring at in the face for 8 years. And so the three of us conducted this ceremony, and they asked me if I could write it down, and I wrote it down exactly as and had evolved it between the three of them. It just had started to, one would say, well, I'm going to say Osiris Onofris, and someone would say, well, I'm going to say Osiris the Redeemer, and says, I'm going to say Osiris slain and risen, and someone else says, I'm going to say, oh, and it corresponds with the elements, we'll do it that way. And so I wrote it that way. But then later people were like, well, you don't have to say it exactly like this. I'm like, yes, you fucking do. Otherwise you're doing a different ritual, And so, I got attached to the ritual as it was. But then eventually, one day, at Power Week, he took the lead role. And I got to see him do it. And then that was kind of the first time I thought that maybe one day I would do it as the lead role. And it was also, he blew me away, because, like I said, he's a deeply religious man. But when someone who's that deeply religious, he was raised Christian Scientist, had become Greek Orthodox, but from a Gnostic Rosicrucian perspective was able to proclaim himself the master of all the gods in the hall of truth, and so when he did it, it was absolutely sincere, and that blew me away. And when he said, I am he who is clothed in a body of flesh, yet in whom flames the spirit of the vast and unknowable one. Fucking off script, not the right words, but his philosophy was, the script's just there as a backbone, and then when the spirit moves, let it move, and he's the real thing. He's a good guy. And Rosemary.
My database has been searching.
That's where the memory, it awakens the memory, actually. Rosemary does, yeah.
So the first elixir that Robert Bartlett taught me to make was rosemary.
Nice.
It's a sun herb. It's very aromatic.
Yeah. Oh, man. So I don't know. Anyway, so you got a lot of this Genesis stuff, but
you're
it's like...
looking for somebody to maybe do this with you?
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, it's,
I might go.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that anybody'd be too upset. There's already more than one order practicing this ritual. So, I just snagged this, so why not? It's a good one. For I am Osiris triumphant, even Osiris Onofris, the justified one. I am he who is clothed with the body of flesh, yet in whom is the spirit of the great unknowable one. It wasn't in the script, is now, because that's what said when he blew my mind that day. And so that's how I wrote it. I had forgotten that. But people would always say it another way, But, yeah, so then, of course, I ended up leading that ceremony after a few more years, and... So when Zarathustra came to the Temple of Isis, he came to this ritual, and I led it. So by then I knew it like the back of my hand, and so we were all just having fun. Because whenever I was the most senior person on deck, that meant it's all just, it's cool. It's cool, everybody. It wasn't a total monkey house. It's just, you know me, you know my personality a bit. Like, I'm funnier, and I'm not as, I don't take myself seriously. Like, I'll call, not people, but ideas out on being not ringing with the ring of truth. Even if they're straight out of McGregor Mathers, I don't give a shit. If it's horse shit, it's horse shit and should be pointed out as such, and we should root it out, as best we can, use that inner compass. But anyway, I'm dominating again the conversation again. I'm feeling self-conscious about talking too much.
In the day of light, in the light of day,
Yeah.
actually, now I can see the writing on the fire wand.
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't seen that last night.
Yeah. Here, let me show you.
This was your mother's.
Well, it was unpainted at that time. I painted it. So Aleph, right? Boy, see Aleph, boop. Aleph, Resh, boop, boop.
Right.
Aleph, Resh, Aleph, boop, 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 boop. So it's sort of like
use
you
the
go
wand
next to
to
it.
create the sigil.
Exactly. That's how all the sigils are created.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're painting it as a in the outer grades, you just get a picture of the sigils and no explanation about where they come from. And then later you make this, and then you go, oh. And so that's how that works. A lot of sigils come from this, actually. So when you have that glyph memorized and all the Hebrew memorized, you can actually get to the point where you can look at a sigil and go, oh, it's Gabriel. It's pretty cool.
So we were listening to episode 4 last night.
Oh, cool. Nice.
There's a lot of things I didn't recognize, but then we got to the LBRP,
Mm-hmm.
and it's quite different from the way we learned it and the way we do it. So I'd be interested to know your feelings about how the source of where you come by your pronunciations.
Mm-hmm. They're from Sephardic Hebrew. I decided to anchor in actual Judaism. I took 2 years of Hebrew weekly lessons from a woman who teaches at University of Judaism, now known by some other title. And she's also a Kabbalist and a writer and a visionary, and she's into Gurdjieff and all kinds of other stuff. So I was like, I love you, and I'll give you half my paycheck if I can come over here and once a week and just sit down and absorb what you have to offer. And so she taught me Hebrew, and so I learned that it's not Gabriel, it's Gavriel, Givura, because it's not a bet, it's a vet. If it has a dot in it, then it's a bet. But it has no dot, so it's a vet. Most of the bets are vets. If it's at the beginning of the word, then it's a bet. If it's in the middle of the word, it's probably a vet. Unless you're saying in something. If you say it's in the house, you say b'bait. So it's two b. But that's the only case, really, that I can think of, where you pronounce a bet in the middle of the word anything but a V sound. So yeah, it's not Gabriel, it's Gabriel. So it's not Gibora, it's Gavura.
But in particular, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is very different from what we're used to.
It's the spelling of the you spell it, because it's blasphemy to try to pronounce it. That's why it's fun for me to be involved with the Source family, where they say Yahweh, because I spent so many years being respectful and pronounce and spelling it out, so as not to breach that ancient, blasphemy. Because the high priest is the only one who knows how to pronounce it, and he only does it in the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, and then that's the big test to see if everybody was sorry enough that week.
Polk had an anecdote about that, where there were some Jewish guests at an event, and they got to the part where they're vocalizing Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, and all the Jewish guests got up and left. Do you remember?
No, that's a good one. That sounds true.
Maybe that's on his YouTube.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. No, but yeah, that's why we spell it. And Atah, Malkut, there's no TH sound in Hebrew, in any dialect of Hebrew. If you're Ashkenazi, then you'd say Malkus. So it's more correct to say Malkus than it is to say Malkuth. When you're saying Malkuth, you're speaking Paul Foster Case. You're speaking Victorian Freemason who heard that his friend met a Jew once, version of Hebrew. And it stuck, because they just kept passing it down in these white people circles, and no one ever bothered to ask their Jewish friend how to pronounce these things. And so that's what I decided to do, was go ask a Jew. She's from Israel. Her grandparents were Persian, and they heard the Messiah was coming and that they should go to Jerusalem, so they sold everything and got rid of anything that looked Jewish and dressed like they were just Arabs, and they were like, and went across the desert on their camel, and they were among the first 200 Jews to arrive in Jerusalem at the dawning of the new state of Israel. And then so their kids grew up and were like gung-ho fucking Israel state, fighting the Palestinians. And so then they had kids, and she grew up like, okay, well, what about God? Wasn't there God somewhere along the line? Isn't there supposed to be some spiritual something happening anywhere at all? So she left and came to Sherman Oaks looking for God, because you couldn't find it in Israel. And
it's crazy.
Yeah. I want to get her on the Esoterinerd podcast.
You lived in Jerusalem and you left and came to L.A.
in
to
search
find the
spiritual satisfaction and
Wow.
fulfillment. Yeah, because here is such great diversity that surely there must be whatever's the latest expression, the latest true expression of divinity. But she's really anchored in Jewish tradition to the degree that I pushed her buttons a lot. Just by talking, but we got through it, and we're still fast friends, and she spoke at my wedding and everything. But I mean, I tried to get her to translate the Ave Maria into Hebrew, and she got to that point, Mother of God. She just wouldn't. She was like, well, there is a way to conjugate those words that way, but surely that's not what it means, right? And I was like, no, that is what it means. They say that Mary's the Mother of God because Jesus is God, and she's his mother, so we call her Mother of God. And she's just like, well, if you want to say Mother of God, I forget the exact phrase, but it would be this. And so I wrote it down, and she's like, I think you should leave. I got up and left. So we had some rough times, but yet in the same conversation, she's talking about, Mohammed was just up against these stupid Jews, and they were just these pig-headed, narrow-minded people that wouldn't accept the new prophet, and so he had to go off and create Islam, and because they were so narrow-minded, and then she'll say stuff like that, and then she'll talk about Hinduism and bring in Krishna and talk about all the different gods and how it's not one god, it's many gods, and then I say Mother of God, and she's like, she couldn't deal with the narcissism.
There is a Mother of God.
Yeah, exactly. But one mother of another God is, who cares? They're not talking about the one God. But then this was talking about the one God, and it's the narcissism of small differences. It's too close to Judaism to be comfortable if you're going to throw in that much blasphemy.
In Egyptian, there's a Mother of a God too.
Yeah, that's where the Christians got it.
What do they call it? The Ennead, the 9 gods. In the creation myth, the very first god, he masturbates.
Yeah, Ptah.
And
that's
the
the sound it makes.
life force lands on the earth, and from that springs the first duality. Geb and
Newt?
Tefnut.
Oh, she came later.
Like
She was a few generations later. I forget what
the entire
it'd be like the
story
Tigers
goes.
or something.
So what were you saying about, you did a sacred geometry class?
Yeah, I did a class at House of Intuition a couple of years ago, and it was about how to open a portal to another dimension, was the name of the workshop.
Nice.
And of course, a lot of people came to that. And essentially, it was very synchronous, the way that I got turned on to what I think is the most sacred geometric object that there is. And it's fairly recently discovered. It's called the E8 polytope. It's an 8-dimensional lattice work. And up until very recently, there wasn't enough computer power to calculate all of the data points of this lattice work. But they used some supercomputers on it in 2007, I think it was. And the American Institute of Mathematicians was involved in this. And they were able to get all the data. And then a fellow named Garrett Lisi used that math to come up with his innovative theory of everything. He's a theoretical physicist, and that made a big splash in the press in 2007. Well, I got in contact with him very synchronistically, and he turned me on to this, and so I created. If you have an 8-dimensional object or a higher dimensional object, it'll rotate in that higher dimension and it casts a shadow in our 3 dimensions, which then casts a 2-dimensional shadow, right? As you rotate it in that higher dimension, there are what are called symmetry axes, where all of a sudden everything locks into a symmetry. And then you'll rotate, and then you rotate a little bit, and it gets out of symmetry, and then you'll find another symmetry axis with a totally different symmetry. This one will be pentagonal, and then you'll rotate it, and then you'll find one that's hexagonal. So it incorporates both the 5 and the 6 in the object, the same object. And then I played around with it a lot, and you could come up with 7-pointed symmetry and 4 and 8 octagonal. There's all these symmetry axes in this thing as you rotate it around, and there's one particular rotation that is just exquisite in the 3rd dimensional shadow, and that is called the concentric circles rotation. And when you put it all the way down to 2 dimensions, it creates this great spirograph thing with concentric circles in it. It looks like a mandala, and in the very center is a hole. It's a tunnel that goes straight through the object. Then if you pop it up into 3 dimensions, then you can actually look at it, and it's got a tunnel that runs through it, and it's just an exquisite object. So the kind of intuition I had was that you can use this object like a stargate, and as you rotate it around, you get these symmetry axes, and you can print them out in 2 dimensions, and that becomes a mandala. And then you use that mandala to meditate, and that's like an address, and that will take you somewhere. And then you can make another, rotate the object again, you find another symmetry axis, print that in 2D, make that into a mandala, set it up, meditate on that, and then you can go to that place. And my intuition is that that the higher beings have been waiting for us to get smart enough to figure this out.
Yeah.
And we finally have the computing power. We finally found this object, and it's like an invitation. It's like a phone book that they're giving us.
Yeah.
It seemed like a new frontier to me for exploration. And actually, the artworks in the back of my car are based on that object, and they're 3x3 mandalas. And then you set them up, and you can use them for meditation purposes, and then you go wherever that particular address is.
Yeah.
And it's such a far out idea, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Well, the 2 divergent simultaneous theories / conclusions / hypotheses, whatever, that come to mind are one and the other. When you go to that place and you experience it as a human being with the kind of computing power that we have as a human being and a consciousness interwoven with that complexity, what does that do for the entities there at that address that we've arrived at? That's conclusion number 1. Question number 1. And then separate simultaneous is that these are, possibly like
a further elaboration or expounding upon the idea of Jungian archetypes, allowing you to key into aspects of your own unconscious, maybe the collective unconscious or conscious mind. Yeah, just basically that. I mean, it's like we used to run into in the order that there'd be people who come from a background where they believe in angels, where I've prayed to angels and they've always answered my prayers. Angels are real, God is real, and this angel was sent from God. So we go, good. So anyway, since you're made in the image of God, when you say, before me, Raphael, Raphael will appear. And so someone from that background empowered with that ability is very empowered, right up until the point where you say, and then you can talk to them. Then you've opened up a can of worms, because if you're going to mix Fundy Joe over here, Toothless Joe from the Inland Empire, who hasn't read a book, and put him in the Golden Dawn, and all he's got to go on is some crazy third-hand hallucinated interpretation of some bullshit at some crazy First Adventist Church of Assembly of the fucker, out in the out in 29 Palms or something. Then you end up with some real wacky interpretations of Golden Dawn. Then on the other hand, you have kind of where Rigardi was leaning, where it was like, let's make this make sense in terms of psychology. So we would run into that, and then so you could kind of like I kind of got used to being like, I would say that I'm a Virgo, so I'm very flexible and malleable. So whoever I'm talking to, that's who I'll teach, and so I'd have someone come in and it's like, well, I'm very pagan and I come from a Celtic background. And I was like, well, W.B. Yeats and MacGregor Mathers put together a system where they took what was available, the information from the Druidic system, and they brought it in, they codified it, and that's actually what a lot of modern Celtic systems are. Okay, sold, she's in, check, so they put me in charge of the orientations for a while. But toward the end, I'd just scare everybody off. They'd come in, I'd be like, wait, are you foolish? This is just a warehouse in the middle of the Inland Empire. You drove here from Hollywood on purpose, And so they'd leave and not join, and people would be like, something about your orientations. I'm like, yeah, you told me I had to do the orientations. But early on, when I was still a believer, I was good at the orientations. And, someone come in from a completely scientific background, I'm like, well, this is basically, I could approach it one way or the other. If someone's a lover of tradition, I get to know a little bit. So what's your Ren Fair? Oh, well, the ultimate Ren Fair. What'd be really cool is a Victorian fair. Well, you've arrived. This is Victorian fair. We've taken the best part of Victorian England and we're putting it on faithfully for you. What do you think? Sold. So whatever your point of view, you could spin it, to sell Golden Dawn.
I took an Enochian class with Lon Milo, and I seem to recall that he was stressing not to take it all literally, that it was more of a psychological...
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you're crazy if you're taking it literally. The definition of crazy, especially the Enochian stuff, because it's like, okay, we're calling on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse to bring about what the fuck are you talking about, Yeah.
Yeah, it was in that class that one of my fellow students, he later on, he was in the OTO, rose very quickly, and then reached a point where he, I guess, went on a pilgrimage out into the middle of the desert and had revelations that he was the Absissimus. And declared himself that when he came back.
Yeah, that's one of the classic ways to go as a Thelemite, is total imitation, but not doing it as creatively. It kind of defeats the purpose. I find more Thelemites in traditional Golden Dawn than in those hardcore Thelemite circles. They seem to be a bunch of followers. It's ironic, isn't it? Like Jesus, it's like that whole Life of Brian thing all over again. You don't need, it's like, yes, we're all individuals. Like, so you can do it however you want. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will. Okay. I prefer to say hi or hello.
Are you familiar with the Frater Akkad story?
Not as well as I should be. I've had it ranted and raved to me by an Irishman with Tourette's syndrome for hours while I was trying to watch porn when I was 17. But other than that, no.
Oh, you remember all of...
He was my Dada house in my original neophyte initiation. But
Yeah, well, he's like the classic story of the occultist who loses his reason.
oh yeah,
He was a student of Crowley,
and he also didn't know how to pronounce Hebrew. There's Achat, is the feminine form of Echad. Achad, not a word.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
But I think he part of a Vancouver temple
Oh, interesting. What period?
in the 20s or 30s.
Oh, okay. Not related to the
30s?
ones I know of.
So, unless there's some kind of link to that old temple.
Maybe spiritually. There's. Well, I won't interrupt.
But Crowley was supposed to have a son, the one that followed, the official heir, and he claimed to be that heir.
Ooh.
And then he wrote a few books.
Yeah, I just remember
pretty classic
111. Achad.
One book that I love, it's about sacred geometry, about the macrocosmic snowflake, which is the tree of life expanding out into infinity.
Nice.
In 3 dimensions. I don't think it's correct.
But it's
I have
fun
issues with it. But,
well, with the tree of life, it's hard to say correct or incorrect. There's a lot of different ways to look at it.
But I guess he ends up. Crowley disowns him, and I guess felt like he'd lost his marbles, but that's Charles Stansfeld Jones was his name, and he ends up back in Vancouver, I think, and there's some anecdotal tale about him wandering around the streets in an overcoat with nothing else on, and perhaps ending up in an asylum or something.
So it's like the quintessential tale of the dangers of obsessing too much.
Yeah. Well, the traditional Golden Dawn equivalent of that then would be Light Bearers of Darkness. I'm trying to remember the name of the woman who wrote it. But she was running one of Felkin's temples after Felkin went to New Zealand. And that was World War II period. Or World War I. And yeah, apparently they lost it. Well, she had decided that the Golden Dawn was part of a Zionist plot for world domination.
Oh, and it's not?
Well, it was at the time the book influenced other popular authors that came around and influenced certain Germans, but so that's creepy. Apparently, and I didn't read it. I only heard about it. Apparently, they were having this recurring vision because it was the Third Order they were in touch with. They were like, what's going on? World War I. And they were like, yeah, just go astral. Just do astral work. And so they just did that for years. And so they kept going back to this room with this table and a bunch of evil Rosicrucians. Fallen Rosicrucians were German, and they were waiting for the one who was going to sit at the head of the table. And so this is like, meanwhile, Hitler's getting blinded by mustard gas in World War I. And then they ended up... A couple of them ended up in mental institutions, from what I understand, the chiefs of that temple. They weren't even polemic. That was traditional Golden Dawn.
Are you familiar with Schwaller de Lubeck?
Mm-mm.
He spent a lot of time in Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
particularly at Luxor, I think it is. He was surveying the temple, I guess, and he wrote books about the symbolism encoded in the temples in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was reading something about how he was involved in some kind of fascist organization back in the day. And when you hear that, it's depressing to hear that these people that you so far admire, took everything to an unacceptable extreme.
Yeah. But people are people, and I think if forgiving one's own shadow
one can start to come to terms with the shadow of others, and be able to perceive the good that one can do in spite of the evil that they do at the same time. So you don't want to like put them on a pedestal or anything, but you can acknowledge, okay, well, that was something good they did. It was like if someone were a fan of the modern freeway and the Volkswagen Bug, and they might say, all right, those are two good things Hitler did. But I don't know. I'm not necessarily a fan of either of those things. So.
Are you familiar with what's going on with Volkswagen right now? Oh my God. It's like one of the biggest corporations in the world, and the most successful, one of the most successful, right? And I guess there was all of this pressure to keep Volkswagens in the American market, the diesels. And so in the modern age, the cars are all computerized. There's a computer mind that runs the engine. So it's all based on the software that you put in that computer. And in order to get all of a quota of diesels purchased in the United States, they had to be able to pass the emissions tests to get these vehicles certified. And I guess the pressure was on the engineers to make these cars work to pass emissions. So some brilliant engineer decided, well, we could write the software so that it can detect when someone is testing it. And when it's being tested, you change all the settings so that it passes the inspection. And as soon as it stops being tested, then you go back to the regular settings. And so that what that means is that every single diesel vehicle that they sold during some 6-year period or something was illegal on the road.
Wow.
and contributing to global warming and whatnot in a majorly way.
And designed to fake out the emissions test.
And so that's fraud.
Wow.
And
That's huge.
And the CEO resigns from the company, and there are 2 engineers that are supposedly 2 high-level engineers that were behind the idea, and now there's congressional hearings into it.
Oh, sweet.
And they're going to have to recall every single one of them and reprogram them.
Expensive.
And it's going to cost billions, and the question is now whether Volkswagen can survive that.
Probably not.
But
But someone might buy them. Someone might feel, might want the Volkswagen symbol, the name, and to put out the next version of a Bug. What if Tesla bought it? Tesla could have the Tesla Volkswagen Bug. The new electric Volkswagen Bug.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Totally. Good thing we're putting that out there for the buzz to send someone else will say, yeah, what it should happen is Tesla should buy it. Tesla should buy it. Yeah, I heard Tesla should buy it. Yeah. That's how radio works.
And the Tesla company is now coming out with batteries that you can put in your house.
Yeah.
You charge up your batteries.
It's
It's totally
so
off
darn
the grid
expensive so far. But. Okay. The Mula Bandha. Yeah. Where you clench your perineum, or chode, or taint. Because it taint the pussy and taint the ass. Hence the expression. The perineum is more of a gentlemanly, polite way of putting it in class, though. Depending on the class. Sometimes, if I'm doing a sanctuary class, I'll go on this whole. In fact, pretty much verbatim, everything I've just said is the way that I lead the Mula Bandha when it's sanctuary class. But because I like to get people laughing and kind of like point to the elephant in the room, like because when you say perineum, everybody in the room's thinking, yeah, you're chode, right? I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the muscle between I know between the nuts and so yeah, you activate that. It used to be a great secret. The yogis wouldn't let anyone know it unless they were the highest degree. It's like you've proven yourself over the years that you've done all the work and you're dedicating your life to this, and they'd mouth to ear whisper, okay, yeah, but now clench your chode a little, and then you really get it going, and then you bring the breath work in, you coordinate it with the breath work, and focus on the third eye, and then you start to get that endogenous DMT. I don't mean to talk about it like it's just plants. That's the thing. It's the whole paradigm of like snorting coke. Like the rich kid that snorts some coke, or even someone on the street that smokes some crack out of a crack pipe, and then there's that resin inside. It's just a real. It's like the Kali Yuga-izing. It's the bringing down. What's the word? The desacratizing, the desacredizing of plants. So I try to keep that in mind and be reverent about when I'm packing a bowl or when I'm eating some broccoli, and keep in mind that there's a plant happening in front of me that's just as miraculous of a thing as my own flesh, and not take that for granted. But when we say, you know what, I just want the DMT. Give me let's uproot this entire fucking, Mimosa hostilis, Mimosa tenuiflora in North Brazil or South Mexico or wherever, and get at the root bark, so that we can use an acid to fuck with the root bark to get that 1% of it that's DMT, so we get this orange powder that we can put in a little speed pipe and go, and then Uber death. It's the blue tunnel times 10,000. It's like the no experience that was ever meant for any mammal to have, and it's incredibly profound. Oh God, I love it. But I mean, I haven't done the ayahuasca route. I still want to try that. But I'm a little worried that I've exhausted my brain's ability to have a psychedelic experience. Like, how with they say if you do too much ecstasy, you don't have dopamine anymore. So you get all this good mood on the weekends when you're young, and then you can't have a good mood ever again for the rest of your life, and it's a real drag, So I feel like I might have done that. Yeah, I might have done that with tryptamines, because well, I don't know. A good psilocybin trip still works, but I never had a DMT trip like my first one. Like after that first one blew me away, but I think that also made me a little shy. It blew me away so much. I was foolhardy going in. I just took the biggest hit of that stuff and held it for way too long, and I just went so far into the bardo that it was just like completely surrounded. The horns, the everything, all this stuff, and it was coordinated, and it was dancing, and it was out there and in here. And then when I opened my eyes, I could see the wood flowing, and I realized that everything I thought was dead wood was still alive, and I was might as well be inside of a tree. The house I was in, the Frank Lloyd Wright-esque Usonian house built by my friend Gordon that I was in at the time, and then my wife had this purple lights going down her back, and then afterward when we talked about it, she was like, yeah, I had these purple lights, and I'm like, fucking right on, yeah, I saw them, so it's like it's cool to have such a profound experience immediately followed by a verification of a comment of when we both see the same thing. It's kind of like, okay, we're not crazy, feeding each other's hallucination.
Well, that's scientific.
Yeah, it's a little bit scientific, but if you need 100
empirical.
Yeah. You need 100 of them, and only one person saying, no, I don't see the purple thing, and the other 99 all see it, and they with a lie detector, they all say they saw it, then there's a purple thing, but until then, it's just hearsay. I saw it, and I've drawn that whole thing that I saw. It was amazing. And then we went into Gordon's room, and we looked at his face. He was an older guy, and so but he's very wise, and his hair was just there in his wheelchair. Oh yeah, I was going to
say coffee shop that delivers.
Yeah, that'd be nice. So do you want to join me in the closet?
In the closet.
Yeah. We'll see what we got here. Fun stuff. Just right about here. Yeah.
Oh, in here.
Yeah. Just kind of explore the mess, So what's this? I don't know. What's this? Oh, this is my mom's old binder. Okay, cool. What was my mom up to? Waning Moon. She was doing some rituals. Bridget. She was studying Bridget. That's how I knew about the eternal flame. We were doing a lot of research and a lot of reports and stuff.
Magical diary?
Well, this was our for the Druidic Craft of the Wise of America, based out of Eye of the Cat in Long Beach. This was our homework for advanced Wicca. We had beginning Wicca and then advanced Wicca. And then thrown into the middle of it is some of my dad's old poetry from like the late 50s. And I have only caught a glimpse of what you are, and that is wonderful. You are a breath of fresh air in the hot summer storm that my inner life has been. A gleam of sunlight where no sunlight was before, but clouds and sheaves, the ruined temples of the past, the broken ground of the night, and dreams that would never last. I have only seen a glance of you, I know. I know it more than I can tell. I always make sure that I have plenty of poetry of my father's that I have never read. I have never read that.
Doesn't have a date on it, unfortunately.
I'm guessing
Is it dated by the postmark?
somewhere between 59 and 60 something. Oh, well, that might. No, because this is with. This
40.
stuff is 1983. So this has just got thrown in there.
Oh, this is very old. This is in the 40s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a letter to Mr. Dan C. Reeb in San Marino, 2260 Hornet Road. Huh, who knew? Yeah, so, I have all that stuff. Okay, well, that's fun. So that I keep that stuff around. I have more of that in other places in the house, but since it was my mom's witch stuff, it ended up in this room. What's this? This got rained on in the garage for a long time. And this was when I was first investigating. Here, let me grab the second attempt. This was a much more successful magical diary. So you can kind of see some similarities.
Bear shit.
Bear shit. Yeah, Bereshit bara Elohim. That's, what am I doing with my R's? What accent is that? I don't know. But, yeah, so I wanted to really get down into it. And so I wanted to look at every letter individually and the numerical value and look at all kinds of different ways of looking at how the arrangements of the words could be interpreted. And here I did the same thing. This was post 9/11, so my focus was on what the fuck was up with Hagar, and this split between Ishmael and Isaac. And but when I was in Portal, so this was like 1999. This was more like 2001. So I went through a bunch of Genesis, and I remember I was listening to Vast, the album titled Vast and the band titled Vast, and I was listening to. It was a great album. He went through a real alchemical process, and he documented it in a great album. Listen to it from start to finish. It'll blow your mind.
I must profess my ignorance.
Oh, it's good. It's good. And then what am I doing here? Oh, yeah. 1 plus 1 equals 2. 2 equals 4. 4, 8, 8. 8, 16. Oh, that breaks down to 7. Okay, so then the 16 doubles to 32, which breaks down to 5. So, okay, so these are the 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, the zygote shit. But breaking each one down to see if there was a pattern in how it breaks down when you do it Kabbalistic nerdy, based on a base 10 like we do. So it ends up being 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, 10, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, 10, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. So I successfully determined that there was a pattern. 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, 10. 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, 10. 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, 10. 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, 10. So as you break down those doubling multiples, you end up in a loop. It's interesting.
Do you know Jin Aquarian?
Yeah. He gave me the name Pymander Aquarian.
I tried to meet with him when I was in Shasta. It didn't work out.
Oh, yeah?
Unfortunately.
Oh, what is this? Whoa. This is cool. This is something written by someone, And if you're out there and you wrote this, contact me and I'll give you credit. I've honestly forgotten whether this was Dana or Justin that wrote this. Before the entrance to the holy place, I shed my imperfections. I sacrifice my impurities. I empty my heart of sin. Procolo procol esti profani varlasti ompala. I return to the day of creation. I am washed clean by maternal waters. Out of that primal darkness, when came forth the Word, was formed the perfect measure of its verity, truth, justice, rightness. Ma'at. Oh yeah, this is Justin. In Ma'at is my foundation laid. I am nothing but what I am created to be, in perfect concordance with the eternal and pre-existent one. I invoke the Lady of Truth, Ma'at, into manifestation. O feather of infinite lightness, heart devoid of falsehood, receiver and conductor of the breath, I call thee, Ma'at. You whose hall is the entryway into this order of light. You who watch, guard, and protect at the threshold of initiation. O highest aspiration which led me unto this exalted point, I thank and bless thee, and call thee Ma'at. You who conduct and recite the word to we the dwellers of the earth, you who clothe the ineffable principles in tangible law and word, speak to me the truth that I may understand. I listen to thee and call thee Ma'at. Lady of the balances, reconciler of all duality, you who are the true middle pillar, I aspire to thee and call thee Ma'at. Perfect measure of all that is right, judge and perceiver of the true nature of all things, assist me that I may know myself as you know me. I call thee Ma'at.
That's pretty great.
Yeah, it's funny how someone can get into magic for a few years and go all the way through the second order, be a Hierophant, and then compose something like that, and then go off and just lead a normal life.
Well, that's what Ma'at's all about, right?
yeah.
Balance, being able to successfully balance things.
Gordon used to call it graduation. When someone would leave the order, it's like, congratulations, they graduated. Oh, good stuff.
Better than ending up in the loony bin.
Oh, hell yeah.
Or worse.
Yeah, this is where it's like, God comes before each other. What? This was some kind of weird notes. Yeah, notes from someone who was teaching some brainwash class. And then this is the tool to get into the universe card. Do you know about that? Oh, yeah. This is all universe card stuff. So this is how you get into the universe card. Or that's the tool to get through it. It actually
The universe card?
Yeah. Or the universe path, I should say. I have one. My mom made it. Oh, where is it? It's actually, it's a shape.
I had one kind of like this, not quite as elaborate or as impressive.
There it is.
And one day at the bus stop in Seattle, the bus showed up and it surprised me.
Uh-huh.
I ran to catch the bus and left my book.
Oh, what a drag.
And somebody...
I did that with my notes for my sci-fi.
Somebody must have picked it up, and if they looked through it, it would be like, oh my God. It would depend on what your own background would be, how you would take all of this strange esoterica,
Yeah.
Maybe they turned it over to Homeland Security. That was before that.
So yeah, you hold this up, and it's a symbol of the balance of all the forces, the 22. So for example, you have a letter for each element, Aleph, Mem, Shin, and Tav to represent Earth. All the three signs of the zodiac that correspond with Earth, so Virgo, Taurus, and Capricorn. And then on the air side, you have Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini, always in order. Cardinal, fixed, mutable. Cardinal, fixed, mutable for fire. Cardinal, fixed, mutable for water. Then on the back, you have the planets as they correspond to the elements. So in this context, they've decided to put Dalet there as Venus representing Earth, Mercury, Bet, as air, Mars, Pe, for fire, and Kaf for water. But no, that's not true. Gimel for water. The Kaf is on the back here in the middle. And so Kaf represents spirit in one context because it connects with the highest you can go while you're incarnate. You can go straight up that path from the sphere of desire. So that's in one context corresponded with spirit. So that's why it's important enough to go on the middle.
So this is a stage in your
this is something
development
in a Golden Dawn ceremony. You have to hold this, and that's the only way you can pass between the pillars into the universe card and navigate your way through the universe card. You hold this the whole time that you're going through the universe card. So this is the key.
I don't think I've ever seen this before.
To the universe card. Again, Theorica stuff. This is the my rendering at the time of the universe card. What else do we have?
Sometimes known as the world.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it used to be the world, but then when they discovered the world was round and that the stars aren't actually written on the inside of anything, then they started calling this the world, the Earth, the world. And so then they had to change the name to the universe. When the Golden Dawn came around, they changed it to the universe to clarify that we're talking about the whole universe. And then when Arthur Edward Waite came around, he decided to be traditional and changed it back to the world. But I'm traditional Golden Dawn, so I call it the universe.
That's really interesting. So when I was a philosophy student, the term world, I think it was discussed, the evolution of the use of that word. And my understanding was that the current understanding for it would be the same as universe, just everything,
Yeah. Olam is the Hebrew. So we say Olam Yetzirah, the world of formation, Olam Asiya, the world of action. But it's the same world, it's just that one's formation and one's action. Here's a breakdown of the LVX formula on the judgment card. L being represented by Isis and Nephthys, V being represented by Typhon or Pluto, or depending on which pantheon you're looking at, and then Osiris or Jupiter or whatever up here, Michael, for the solar fire. So you have Alb, Isis, and Nephthys, the astral fire. So that's the vital heat of existence. And then Aud, which is the volcanic fire, that which destroys the material. So it's the rage, the tormenting, constrained fire that renders asunder the veils of matter. And then the solar is Osiris having been slain and risen, the life-giving Yeshua, one foundation, etc. And so in the formula, when you go through the Practicus initiation, you start with Osiris, and then you go meet the bad guy. You meet, Set or whatever, and then you're reconciled here, and you find out that you're an immortal soul because of where you came from, and regardless of what gets destroyed. And so it's a really beautiful ceremony, and it's the real meaning of the judgment card. It has nothing to do with the Book of Revelation, and yeah, so that's good. But I was breaking it down as from the adept point of view. You start out as life, then you voluntarily go through death in order to allow yourself to be resurrected. So every morning you shuffle off your mortal coil and you shine as your mortal self. Or as the samurai in Hagakure had said, live your life as if you are already dead. I mean, that's a very samurai way of putting it, but I kind of relate with that in terms of this, because that's why you do an LVX. That's why you get forgiven by a priest, and why you get it all off your chest at Yom Kippur, is so that you can walk as if you are already dead, which means you're eternally alive. This is the sun card. So you have a Taurus boy and a Cancer girl coming together to make the Gemini. You have a happy sun. Each one of these stones is a different zodiacal aspect. So we were talking about, make sure you get the right zodiacal aspect. You have to wait until the world rolls along this wall to the right spot before you can invoke, say, the sun. So yeah, that's one paradigm. But if you rise up above that into the sun, you realize that these are all rays that are coming out of you, and this wall is generated from you. So every different possible experience in all of its nuance is here in the wall, but the path to transcend, as is stated in the initiation into this path, that every vehicle has a unique relationship with the light of the Father, which is the only thing that's actually going on, the mind of the Father. The sun is fire, and it is the dispenser of fire, and it is also the channel of the higher fire. So you have Tiferet as the expression of Keter, and then all of the forces in the astral being created, and then duality, and then, etc. What's on there? Urging forth the growth of nature. The three aspects of the sun, instead of instead of some harsh thing like this, the three aspects of the sun is, well, sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold, and sometimes it's just right. It's like, wow, So the sun card is real, like, nice, good stuff. The moon card, that's where it gets. I guess this is how I felt at the time about it, And so you write up, sitting as Harpocrat in the sign of silence on the back of the crawdad, symbolizing Cancer at a trine with Pisces, and then you go on the yellow brick road. But you got to get past this guy. He says, "What dost thou seek?" And the only acceptable response is, "I seek to learn that I may serve." And then he'll fuck off. And then this one will lead you down the pathway between the pillars to Netzach. And that's how you get to Netzach from Malkut. So it's all about finding present time and not because it comes in. Now, okay, this is the child of the sons of the mighty, which, in other words, this is the only tarot path that that refers to something that is a grandchild of God, not a child of God. This is created by man. And as a Briatic concept, on the scales of colors of the Tree of Life, on the Queen scale, the scale of ideas, the scale of the Briatic concept of things, it already has flex. In Bria, it's the only one that does. Most of them have flex and raise in their princess scale. But in the Queen scale, Kof has flex. Even as a concept, it's fucked. Up in the king scale, we usually use the king scale. That's where crimson comes in. It's half blue and half. And when I say fucked, I mean it's grounded. It's already being influenced by chaos before it even manifests into the world of formation.
Is it okay for me to take a picture of that?
Sure. And so you end up getting overwhelmed by this fierce character of the Hyrus, talking about a raging storm that is the unknown future. Then nothing can withstand. Like, you think you're going to withstand the raging storm of the terror of the unknown of what's going to happen next? You don't know, And but you've already seen the Hyrus, and the Hyrus just says, the Hierophant in this case says, "I am the past, reflecting all, concealing all." So you're like, great, okay, so you can look at the world, and you're looking at the world of the past, and it reflects all, but it conceals all. And the future is this scary unknown place. And so then you finally find your place between the pillars with Ma'at. Again, I remember the invocation of Ma'at earlier. And she is the ever-passing present which stands in the place of the past. So yes, here we are in this place that comes from the past, in the present. And actually, that's the only thing there is. And the rest of it's illusion. And that's the whole thing of the Path of Kof and the Moon card. It's dealing with that nightmare reality of the created by the created. That which the created created. Nightmare on Elm Street, for instance, goes. That would be in there. And when your dad hit you inappropriately that one time, or when you got molested, you'll find that in there too. So that's a rough path. And that's why they wait until you've already been through the universe and judgment and the sun, and then finally you start to work this, because you've got a real good sense of self and reason. Now you're moving over toward the sphere of desire, but in order to get there, you have to plow through some of this stuff in the back of the head. Then you get here finally. This is a great, great, great place to be. The Age of Aquarius! Yay! So she's Isis, Venus, Nephthys, Hathor, and Jesus, all wrapped into one. And that is Thoth. And this is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Notice there's no serpent in it. There's the bird of Hermes, the sacred ibis of Egypt. And that represents wisdom. So instead of a serpent tempting an innocent girl in the Garden of Eden, that's already happened, it's already fallen, and now it's been redeemed, and that girl has become the second Adam, and she is the goddess. She is both manifest and unmanifest. She is known and unknown. She's the Venus that connects all the spheres of the Tree of Life. And she's pouring down the spheres of Chokmah and Binah. And above her is the star Sirius, the dog star, the brightest star in the sky. Now we know it's 2 stars, maybe 3. And then there's these 6, I think there's supposed to be 7, yeah. There's supposed to, oh yeah, the one on her forehead too. So there's 7 7-pointed stars. And then you have the Tree of Life over here. So you're back in Eden, you've eaten the Tree of Knowledge already, you know there's good and evil, yet you're in Eden because it's been restored, because there's wisdom.
These are amazing.
Thank you. This is my work from when I was a little boy. Before I even... This was when I still was starry-eyed and I thought the order was a good thing. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Now you get to the tower, yeah. Notice I put Crowley's star on top. I was going to destroy the false tower of Thelema with my pure Golden Dawn ways. What's there to say about this? Oh, and I put a rose cross here too. So see, the Rose Rupe et Ori Crucis destroying the Star of Babylon. That's where I was at the time.
So how old were you here?
That was my paradigm. I was... What year was that? 99. So I was between 20 and 21. Yeah. This was after the fire, and had taken over the duty of having a sanctuary for a while. It was called Sanctuary Gabriel, and it was down in San Pedro by Long Beach. So I was.
But you said that you had joined initially when you were 16.
Yeah. Yeah. So by then I was 19. So yeah, this is...
Took you a while to get to this stage.
Yeah, a few years. I was in Portal So it was 99. I joined in 94. So it was 5 years. So I must have been 21. Oh yeah, I said between 20 and 21. So I joined when I had just turned 16. Oh, this is fun. Now, one thing that's wrong with the Boda deck and the Rider-Waite deck is they lack the one thing that redeems this symbol, which is the upright star over the head of the devil. They put a reversed star in the Rider-Waite deck. I don't know why he decided to do that, but in the Portal initiation, it's very specifically pointed out that this is not an evil symbol because the whole thing is being directed by Yeshua in the Pentagrammaton as symbolized by the upright pentagram over the head of the devil. So the Wang deck and the Cicero deck and maybe a couple others are the only decks that don't contain an evil card. Here is the Temperance card, the newer of the two, and this is apparently where I derailed in my writing shit down. But yeah, she's got watery fire and fiery water, and she's mixing them in perfect equilibrium. She's got the Prithivi Tattva, maybe, the square yellow symbol over her breast. She's got the sun in her third eye, and that's kind of you get an idea that she's looking up at her third eye and connecting, and she's reconciling with her feet, kind of outstretched, the earth and the water, the fire and the air, and that's Temperance. That's the way. That's the way up the tree. Straight up from Yesod to Tiferet. Daughter of the Reconcilers. This is Death. Look at the magician with the...
So, I noticed how you pronounce Thoth.
Mm-hmm. You say Thoth.
I usually do.
Yeah.
I don't know where I learned that.
Oh, I'm sure it's both wrong. I mean, it's Greek for one thing. Tehuti, Djetuti or whatever. Jehuti is probably a lot more accurate to the... But as far as how the Greeks pronounce it, I don't know. At the ending of the night, at the limits of the light. And then I used to be into this. We had a Shalom Jerusalem ritual for peace in Jerusalem, but I just got into this song, even though it's kind of Zionist, just because it's sort of beautiful, about Jerusalem of gold. They sang it in Schindler's List. Bit of an anachronism because the song was written in the 60s. But yeah, rituals. Okay, so at a certain point, it came time for me to be the one asked to write a ritual. And that was 2002. And so I wrote a ritual based on the universe card called S1. And then later, in 2009, I was asked to write another ritual for Haiti because they had just gone through a big earthquake. And so I wrote Ritual S2.
And what did S2 do?
Where's Ritual S2? Oh, Ritual S2? Where is Ritual S2? Well, I'll send it to you in a document anyway.
Send love and compassion to the victims of the earthquake?
No. Okay. What it does is, you're familiar with the Vault of the Adepti, right?
Yeah, very superficially.
Okay, so if we pretend that this is the Venus door, so this door would be like green, let's say. And then right here there's a yellow wall, and then right here there's an orange wall, and then right here there's a red wall, and then a purple wall, and then an indigo wall, and then a blue wall. So you have the whole thing. And then the ceiling's white, the floor is black. That's the basic idea.
Okay.
So what Ritual S2 does is it allows someone who's a neophyte to tap into that current, given what they already know, and it reveals some things that aren't revealed yet, but you can look them up in a book. So you end up calling on, through all the appropriate divine names, the planetary angel of each of the 7 planets, and then they take their position in the 7 directions. But you do it in a particular way, where after banishing, doing appropriate openings and everything, and all the middle pillars and stuff, you get in touch with your own corrosive Saturnian nature, self-defeating beliefs, fears, things like that, things that are unwanted obstacles, and then you burn them in a cauldron, and you barf up all the gross indigo energy from your own self, and you empty out, if you go all the way with it, not just the negative, but the positive too. You just release all of your Saturnian current. Then you turn over here to the Saturn wall, to Cassiel, and you ask him to bring in fresh Saturn from the Ein Sof ore, newly created, to fill up the empty space that you just created. And then you do it for Jupiter, and then you do it for Mars, and then you do it. And so each time it's like, there's a list of things that are negative for Mars. So I'm going to release my irritability and my anger and my blah, 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 but I'm going to bring in confidence and willpower, and so you transform all of these 7 negative aspects of a personality into seven sins, if you will. In fact, I think I even throw the seven deadly sins in there too, as they line up with the planets in one particular paradigm. And so then after you've done that, then you are worthy to become the image of the goddess as the perfection of the human vessel. And then once you do that, you call on her, and you self-identify as Isis, Mighty Mother, and you go through this whole thing, and then you travel with the 7 angels to Haiti. And then you rise up in the plains above Haiti, and then you invoke all of the angels of Earth under the guidance of Forlock and all of the divine names of Earth. And then as the Virgin Mary, Queen of the Angels, surrounded by the authority of these 7 archangels, you command all of the angels of Earth to go down and protect Haiti from these fucking asshole white people coming in to take advantage of them and their time of absolute vulnerability right after the earthquake. Among other things, and to help heal and protect the individual, the good people, not the wicked people, because there's of course wicked people in Haiti, I guess, or that's what people like to think. So the rituals for the good people of Haiti. S2, the ritual for the protection and healing of the good people of Haiti. That's the formal title.
Actually,
Yeah.
But it could act as a template for doing similar kinds
exactly.
of rituals.
No, I encourage people to hack it up and use it for whatever they want, but I do say that if you're going to use the S2 formula, just throw in a little mention of Haiti, it's like, and Haiti, toward the end. And so then S3, that was 2009 was S2. And then S3 came around after the schism of March 2011. I decided to make Ritual S3 to help bring a sense of identity to the Temple of Isis, while I was trying to protect people from at the time. And so I made the S3 to help us to kind of come together as a family, Temple of Isis, and so that they could brag about that they have S3 and CSS doesn't. And so I made it, and it all says Temple of Isis in it. But so what it is, it's the completion of of what I had set up so far, because S1 was based on the zodiac, and S2 was based on the planets. So S3 is based on the 3 mother letters and the cross in the middle. So it completes the symbol of the rose.
Wow.
So S3, I borrowed a lot from Thunder Perfect Mind. the Gnostic scripture. And the formula is first you do like a quick the idea is that you're not supposed to do S2 until you've done S1 a bunch of times. And you're not supposed to do S3 until you've done both S1 and S2 a bunch of times. So it's like step 1 of S3 is remember S1? Yeah, do that. Put that up. Okay, step 2 is you remember S2? Okay, do that. Well, I mean, that's not literally step 1 and step 2 because you do your banishings and normal openings before that. But then you basically, real quick, step 6, you do S1. Real quick, step 7, you do S2. No, you don't. Step 7, you invoke Yah. So you start with the divine name of Chokmah. And so I've, sort of intuitively / educatedly decided to bring in Yah and through basically to the Maslowed, so the whole hierarchy of Chokmah, and then with the incense burner. Now this is after having drawn an Aleph, so you start with Aleph, and so that's what it was, because in theory you've already done the middle pillar, so you've already invoked Ehyeh, and so you do this Chokmah and the Aleph, so it's the path of Aleph, not just air, not it's specifically the path that connects Keter with Chokmah, and then you draw with the incense burner, representing the incense burner in this case representing the letter Aleph on the altar. You draw a Yod starting with your crown up here, and then dipping down and forward to your third eye, and that's where the bottom of the Yod ends. So you've invoked Chokmah and you've connected it to your third eye. So I'm bringing in my own personal biases and mythology into the temple, basically, at this point, or into this practice, these particular rituals, the S rituals, and so then after that you go into Shin, and but you do that. I was doing a little nod to the Source family. I call upon the Divine Father Yod by all the divine names of Chokmah. So I was kind of showing. Kind of people who think Father Yod, it's a stupid cult leader. I was like, what? Father Yod? And well, read it. Do some research and find out why he called himself Father Yod. It pre-existed him. It was like he borrowed it from somewhere. And so then you do the red letter Shin, and then the multitude of stars. Oh yeah, well, I'll just read some of these. I'll just read part of it. I stand before thee as thy daughter, and I ask that I might be a manifestation of thy infinite and abundantly unfolding creativity. And I humbly ask that I might unfold as well, as a flower in the presence of thy vastness and thy multitude of manifestations, to bear witness, to serve, and to receive the light of thy sun and moon and thy multitude of stars. Thy will be done. Let it be done to me according to thy word. So basically what's happened here is okay, so the next thing is you go into the Mem. So you start out as the daughter. You start out as the spouse of God with the Aleph. Then you move into daughter with the Shin, which is an interesting choice, I know. But I figure if God is Shin to you, then you're relating to it as the daughter. If God is a flaming fire coming down from heaven like the Spirit, then you must be the vessel that's there to receive it. If God is the Holy Spirit flowing through you, then you're the spouse of the Father. You're the spouse of God. You're the spouse of the Ruach Elohim. You're the one channeling God. So you have an equal relationship like that. And then when you're the mother, when you're giving birth to God, when God's saying, "Mommy, can I go to the bathroom?" then you're the mother. And so then that's Mem. And so you do Mem, and then the names of Spirit and water go together nicely. And then you have Isis Maria, that whole Alexandrian syncretization. The new wine pours continually into my heart from thee, from the crown of all crowns, and melts my heart like wax in the wordless presence of thy all-pervading and formless fire. The first part was from a poem I wrote to a girl once. The second part was inspired as I was writing the script. For I am the silence that is incomprehensible, and the idea whose remembrance is frequent. This is straight out of Thunder Perfect Mind. I am the voice, Thunder the Perfect Mind. I am the voice who is manifold, and the word whose appearance is multiple. I am the utterance of my name. I am thy bride and spouse, O Holy Spirit, for thou art in me as I am in thee. And then the mother is the Mem part, and then you take a moment to think about what if you really were the mother of all. And then you do this Rose Rebe Ettore Crucis thing.
ad gloriam rose crucis ad crucis rose gloriam per omnia secula seculorum. Amen. So it's just a little reveal from the inner order, just to put the cap on the symbol, and then that's it. So that's the S3, and I didn't intend to write an S4, and then I wrote an S4. And S4 is around here somewhere. It's actually on the table in there. I was going to show it to you, but the S4 is based on... Oh yeah, more Enochian. Oexiayale holedo ode zodia raome okoraxo. The mighty seat grounded aloud, and there were 5 thunders. Boom. Enochian. What are you gonna do? Let's see. Is there anything else that's fun? Oh yeah, I haven't even opened this yet. This is my newer magical journal. So this was, I was getting into that part of Genesis. Didn't really find much, but I learned a bit, that it was the name of God that said, Hagar, don't worry, I'm going to take care of you and Ishmael, and he's going to rise up and be an ass against all nations, and all nations will rise up against him. It'll be great, And but the God that told that to her was called the God who sees me. Very interesting. It doesn't come up anywhere else in the Bible. So this is some secret 7 habits of highly effective people. This is mapping out the Z formula of the neophyte initiation on a human body. See the person laying down? So it was an exercise I was doing where you imagine the whole ceremony taking place inside your body. But then that means that your head has to be the conduit connecting the Hierophant with Keter. So, and then this is the vault, standing in the vault of the Adepti, doing the same thing with the rows above and the rows below.
Wow.
Yeah, fun stuff. This is like, some of it's just reflections, and some of it's like stuff that I never finished this because I didn't bother, because a different and much poorer theory came about, so I ended up having to go with that one to conform. Just like with, a friend of mine did the math and found out that middle C was like 45 octaves away from green light. So I painted my keyboard and said, perfect, there's 12 half steps. I'll start with C at green. And I started doing this whole thing with Libra as C. Then I come to find out that Boda has been doing this for 90 years or whatever, and they've got C as red, and that's traditional Golden Dawn. I'm like, fuck. So I had to rearrange my whole perception of how music corresponds with color and Kabbalah. And similarly, I think this made a lot more sense than this shit. Because with this one, you have to do this, like, the Mars one, okay, you have this, and then it jumps over here for no reason. Like, what were you thinking? Was it just, I was feeling intuitive,
So Boda got that from the
Golden
original
Dawn,
temple?
The C red? Yeah.
Case Pat got it from his teachers?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, supposedly. But, yeah, so, that happened a lot. Like, for example, someone was like, hey, we should translate the Holy Art Thou into Latin. So I went and talked to the guy who translated the Military Gloriosa, which allowed them to make a funny thing happen on the way to the forum. He's an old Quaker and a master of Latin. And I told him, and I showed it to him, and I told him about the context. And based on all that, he said, then it should be, Holy art thou, Lord of the universe, Sanctus est Dominus de mundi. Holy art thou, whom nature has not formed, Sanctus est qui natura non finxit. Holy art thou, the vast and mighty one, ruler of the light and the darkness. Sanctus est Dominus de mundi rex lucis et tenebrarum. And then some other doofus with a dictionary beat me to the punch, and then he said, no, it should be Sanctus est tu, Dominus de mundi, Sanctus est tu, quim natura non creatosis, Sanctus est tu, vastus et voluntas rector lucius et tenebrarum, which is the one I have memorized, even though it's not the one that I translated, it's the inferior one that they went with. I had to conform. Even though I had the better of the two translations, because Sanctus est tu is redundant. If you're saying Sanctus est, you're obviously talking to a person. It's obviously a command. You don't say, you go. You shoot the gun and say, you go. It's a race. You just say go. Same thing. And then
and then thinks it is formed. Creatosis is created. Creation goes on the level of creation in Bria. Formation happens on the level of formation in Yetzirah. Different words, different fucking world of the Kabbalah. And then the third line, anyway, he went with Rex. He thought that had a better ring of ruler than rector, which sounds like I don't know. Anyway, this is the vault stuff. A funny thing happened on the subway. I was going through hell one day, and then I closed my eyes, and I was like, oh, I should go to my inner vault. And I went there, and it was vivid, fucking clear as day, and I couldn't believe it. I went inside, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's here. I did it. It's like I've been doing vault work for so many years that I finally was able to just close my eyes and go into it, And so I decided to map out how the colors appeared to me when I was in my own personal vault, which is different from how they appear when I was in the physical vault at the Temple of Isis, but uses the same formula that all vaults use, which is to tinct the nature of the square with the nature of the planet. So you remember there were 7 walls in there with the 7 angels? So the green one, for instance, you take these 40 symbols and put them on the green wall, and it ends up looking like this. You can find, for instance, like that yellow, that blue of the moon with the green of Venus makes that sort of teal color. The orange for the sun. Well, in this case, I don't know what. Oh yeah, I just tincted the opposite of it. I tincted the. I don't know what I did there, but anyway, you get the idea. These are the 7, and then I took Lon Milo Duquette's notes about how the Shem corresponds to the Goetia. Cut off the Goetia because I figured I wasn't going to use it, and then used that as the basis for my for my page on the Shem Hemferesh. And then I took all these talismans with all the Shem symbols and lined them all up, and then these are the different various titles. And then Lon had one numbering system, and the order I came from had a different numbering system. So I have his numbering system here and our numbering system here, so that I know which fucking Shem I'm talking about. And so that's fun. And then, what else? I don't know. A bunch of stuff. Oh, this was my DNA alphabet. What's that?
The 72 names. I
was working on that for a while. Yeah, that's fun stuff. All from that Exodus line. So here, let me grab a 4-sided die real quick, and I'll show you my DNA alphabet. Basically.
Can I take a picture of that 72 names?
Oh, yeah. So if you look up, like my last name, Reeb, and then DNA alphabet, you'll get this whole bunch of different blog posts on the Edward Reeb blog. The DNA pronunciation key, DNA alphabet memorization tool, DNA alphabet word for the day is what I'm looking for. It's talking about enzymes and proteins and peptides as if they were words, which they are. So basically, this is the game. So you roll it, okay, adenine, okay, you roll it, guanine, you roll it, cytosine, okay. So adenine, okay, and then guanine, okay, and then cytosine. So you got S, or what the fuck is S? S is serine. So serine is here. And so these are all the different possible combinations of nucleic acids which result in serine. And so you combine all these different possible combinations using the hermetic way of making sigils and the particular correspondence, which I'll explain in a minute, between the nucleic acids and the elements. And you end up with this symbol. So in my DNA alphabet, that is the letter which is the amino acid serine. And the pronunciation key, okay, so...
This is okay, isn't it?
Yeah, go for it. It's also on the internet. This is just the...
Fascinating.
So, tryptophan decarboxylase is an enzyme that I decided to take an interest in at one point after I had smoked some DMT, and I think having taken some ayahuasca, you might be interested in it as well. This is a little guy that every human being has in their brain and elsewhere. And what he does, he's got 416 some odd letters. So these same letters. So the amino acids made up these different combinations. And so the word that ends up looking like this when it hits water is spelled that. And so those are all the different letters that represent the amino acids. And so, okay, so you know how it's spelled, but how do you pronounce it? Well, I was inspired by Enochian. Mene esi farar geki mavda yavaine yamiga iger, and it goes through, and it's actually not that long, but it ends up saying tryptophan decarboxylase.
Sounds like a Tibetan chant.
I know, yeah. It's a 480-letter DNA word. In other words, it's a protein molecule made up of 480 amino acids. Skip a bit, Brother Maynard. It catalyzes several different decarboxylation reactions. In other words, it separates carbon dioxide from certain molecules. Okay, skip a bit. Tryptophan decarboxylase uses... Okay, skip a bit. Oh, you need to take B6. It'll take... I'll sum up. What it does is... There's another one, and I forget its name. So these two enzymes work together. 3, actually, if you count the one that you take the inhibitor for. So they all work together in the DMT dance of the brain. There's this guy, and what he does is he'll take a tryptophan, which is one of these letters. It's one of the letters that the whole fucking language is written in. He'll take one of those, and he'll go boop, and flick off a carbon dioxide, and then just fuck off. He's done. He's done his job. And so it's now no longer tryptophan, it is now tryptamine, which is part of every tryptamine. And then this other enzyme that's only got 268 letters comes up and goes, and then fucks off. And what it just did was it put a carbon with 3 hydrogens on, and then it did it again. They methylated it. That's what it is. So it comes up and methylates it twice. And then you have DMT. And then the third enzyme comes along and says, oh, fuck, it's DMT, and comes over and dismantles it as quickly as possible, because you're not supposed to have too much DMT around outside of certain parts of the pineal, because then you'll hallucinate and you'll crash the car and all that. So that enzyme's there. It's a friend, and we intentionally and suppress it when we know we're not going to be driving cars and we've got a nice, a shaman there looking after us or whatever. So that's the dance of DMT in the brain, and these three creatures / words of the DNA. They're written in the DNA in chromosome number 7 in every human being. So, and it's written differently and it's formed in plants in different ways with something similar, some similar dance of an enzyme. And so this is the real magic as far as I'm concerned. This other bullshit, this Golden Dawn shit, is just a waste of mental space. This is what I should have been studying all along.
Do you know about DNA activation?
Yeah, you spend $400 and you go for a weekend and they point a crystal at you and then you psychosomatically feel a little better or whatever. Yeah, I know about it. I'm nice to people when they invite me. I say no thank you with a smile and say I used to help out a similar personality type with his weird healing thing. So I know where you're coming from. Actors. Anyway, yeah, so it's fun stuff. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't disregard DNA activation so callously. I mean, I'm sure it's just as.
I haven't had mine activated. So.
I don't know. It just seems like ridiculous to me. But one time, I was going to say my stepdad, when I met my cult leader, he had a blasting rod in the style of Westcott, and then he put a crystal on it when he started dating a New Age girl, and he showed it to me once at dinner, and I said, "You blast that DNA," and he said, "Fuck you," and he put it away, and then later he was like, "You got to give me space to reinvent myself." I was like, okay, fair enough. So one thing is, as much as I disagreed with him, I agreed that Golden Dawn ought to reach out to New Agers. So I don't want to talk so much shit.
So Golden Dawners, are they Old Agers?
Well, yeah, some of them, they poo-poo New Agers. My dad, I have a soundbite of my dad saying, "I do not like the term New Age. I consider my esoteric commitment to be like George Solke and the Fifth Symphony, and I consider a lot of these New Agers to be more like Huckleberry Duck and the neighborhood amateur barbershop quintet that doesn't know how to sing." That was my dad's opinion about New Agers. So, I mean, yeah, hanging out with Source Family and stuff like that, that's a John Reeb 2.0 re-upgrade, to not be such an arrogant ass about being a high magician. This was when I was designing the symbol that would become the wedding symbol for Janie and I, that we put on our invitations. It's very, she did the trees.
Oh, that's cool.
I did the concept. She made it look like wood. And, yeah, Very beautiful.
Looks Celtic.
Yeah, exactly. We were going for Celtic, Jewish, but also like geometric and natural,
Yeah.
like, you know, combining a lot of opposites. Not that Celtic and Jewish are necessarily opposites, but this is, you know, if you really want to be a nerd.
He had a great chessboard. It was all
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's much better than this one.
wood. Each one, the little
Oh
things all glued together, and they were all three-dimensional, and they were all painted.
That must have taken forever. So yeah, these are flows of energy on the watchtowers, and how different things are flow in different directions, and what the logic is, and how you can try to get used to it. And then this is some of the interactions with the Enochian seniors. My favorite, Anodoinu. Appearance. Turban-like orange headpiece with diamond-shaped stone at the front, silver, metallic mercury, orange-red on a something, bear horse dog of golden orange, serene, right hand a scepter, left holds a chain. Power, the impetus of thoughts, the first spark of thoughts, the ideas which contain the rest, below implied. From here is possible to see the whole picture at once, but only for the one experiencing. Hard to explain. Yeah, that's Anodoinu. I love him. He's the Mercury Fire senior in the Book of Revelation, where it talks about the 24 elders that sit around the throne of God chanting, holy, holy, holy. The way I was taught, these guys won't take you seriously unless you're at the throne of God chanting, holy, 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 right there with them. And so you have to approach them with this great respect. And then you ask, hey, who are you? What do you do? You know, I need it for my grimoire. So this was just how they looked to me, not from any.
Someone explained once that us approaching them and trying to get their attention was like, imagine that there's a scholar and he's sitting by the fire on a cold winter night. Mm-hmm. He's reading a book and he's smoking his pipe and he's got his legs crossed and a mouse comes out through the hole in the wall and comes over and like tries to get his attention and he just ignores it. And then so the problem is, how do you get his attention? And then you have the larger problem of like convincing him to help you in some way.
Right.
And I thought that was really helpful.
I heard a similar but different story is about pronunciation and not needing to have perfect pronunciation. Because what if you were sitting there and a mouse came up and said, "Hey, Edward," but said it with a weird accent? Would you listen?
Mispronounce your name.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but you're a human and it's a mouse. You'd be like, "What's that now?" Like, what? Yeah, even if he didn't get it perfect pronunciation.
Where's my fly's water?
Yeah. Spiritual alchemy equals philosophy. The Arabs absorbed the knowledge of Alexandrian alchemists from 9th to 11th centuries. Spain, Albert the Great, Roger Bacon, Nicholas Flamel, Paracelsus. Find A. Watts photo with a joint. The philosopher is stoned. Gods and angels, archetypes, demons, neurosis, spiritual essence missing from psychology, conscious, ruach, subconscious, higher self, collective unconscious, personal unconscious. Blah, blah.
This is in 2012.
Yeah. Oh, this is Chick Cicero. He came to Power Week that year.
So he gave you a lecture about spiritual alchemy?
Spiritual alchemy and psychology. And this was a later rendering of Temperance. You saw the earlier one. So
you drew your own deck?
Yeah, just certain cards. Yeah, this was our history of... the history of the Egyptian pantheon as best as it could be kind of like put into terms that could be explained and kind of addressed some of the contradictions a little bit. My notes weren't as good as the actual class. This one I decided that this would be my signature for Pymander Aquarium after Jen named me Pymander Aquarium. And then this is when it was like magical, and then now it's like, okay, I'm cooking myself some ayahuasca. And then I'm dividing up the world. This is where I decided who I would invite to things, social only, magic only, both.
And
after
top of
I
the
was-
list is Damien.
Yeah, after I was leaving. Then I started my first yoga sequence. I first started teaching yoga. And then, then I started taking notes about smart drugs and deciding what pills to take to get my brain to work. And then, what's this? Oh yeah, I was deciding how to format to be a yogi podcast. And then, this is, oh, good. I lost my notebook for the sci-fi. I have one of those podcasts, the 7 Daunting podcasts. Take your time. You can take years at it if you want. But like one of them is The Coffee House and Interdimensional Odyssey, and that's going to be my sci-fi, epic sci-fi novel. And so this is about that. So in 1919, Theodore Kaluza theorized the fourth dimension to explain electromagnetic force. So the island is a metaphor. The coffee. This is, by the way, just my own writing down and establishing the behind-the-scenes stuff that I don't intend to share. So I'm probably not even going to include this. The island is a metaphor. The coffee, or maybe I will. The coffee house, like us, is mostly saltwater because you're on an island and you're surrounded by the ocean. The pyramid is mostly a mystery. It was built by our ancestors, but no one knows exactly who or how.
Or for what?
Yeah. We make great leaps to find each other and communicate, for which we take for granted. So there's all these things tied up in the symbolism of this environment I call the coffee house. 2 things, smell of popcorn, and I don't know, I didn't do anything with that idea. It exists in the 9th dimension, between the 9th and 4th dimensions. Whoever you are on the island, you can see a door that exists inside the coffee house, the door of the universe. That is not very clear notes, but 10 dimensions of space, 1 dimension of time. What about the doors to other coffee houses? Sometimes involves the distant projections of doors on neighbors' islands. The other side of the door, 5 times 0.01 infinity, a physical universe, an astral level, but 99.9% an empty, non-potential, non-manifest designated address. So the location of the coffee house is in an empty, non-potential, non-manifest designated address. But it also exists and is anchored in the fact that it has a door to a real universe. And it has 9 doors to a real universe, except sometimes it'll have 1 door to another island, so it'll only have 8 doors to a real universe. So that flat 2-dimensional doorway is actually anchoring this thing not only in reality, but in all realities.
I wonder how this relates to my Stargate idea.
It probably does. I think we should come together with some of these ideas, because I'm doing it as fiction, so I can free my mind up enough to actually put some ideas together.
I bet you one of the Symmetry Axes is this address.
Yeah. So I have a malachite floor. It's green, the earth with vegetation, swirled by time, but frozen still from our perspective, the way that malachite looks. You know malachite.
Yeah.
And then, so here's this weird idea. So the cube of space open on one side, all 10 down here. The multi-dimensional origami. So the matter, energy, space-time universe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension, 4 dimension, this moment only is the first 4 dimensions. And then the 5th dimension is the whole universe at once, all possible timelines. And so the doorways, you can leap out into a different parallel, like the common parallel dimension, the
multiverse.
The one where Nixon is still alive or whatever. And then from there you get into different universe types. And then, you get into universe type A or M. I hadn't decided. Just the main universe type, our universe type. So all the universes of our type. So now we're not in parallel universes anymore. We're in other universes that happen to be programmed the same way. So that's up in the 6th dimension. And then you get up into the 7th dimension, where you have multiple universe types all floating around as if they were 2-dimensional squares in an infinite 3-dimensional space, but they don't intersect because of the vast spaces in between them, where universes can't exist. So the way particles are relating to each other don't come together in a universe. It just doesn't work. The universe is over before it begins. And so there's all these vast spaces. The flat parts that actually float around are the universe types that work. And so when you get into those flat spaces, then you have an infinite number, or 10 to the power of 60, whatever, number of universes of that particular type, each with its own parallel, or the equivalent of the concept of parallel timelines. And so these doors lead there too. So if you want to take your body with you, you got to be careful, or you can.
When were you doing this?
Oh, this is just
a couple of years ago.
Last year, yeah. This is really recent.
Hmm.
And then
we're both tuned into the same
yeah,
current.
yeah. And then
this is an egregore.
Yeah. Then you get up into possible types, impossible types. Oh, here we go. Something involving the nature of particles is up here, beyond the different universe types.
Scientific.
Yeah. And then, well, it's my notes, It's subtext, like the behind the scenes stuff. I'm not telling people, like I'm just telling the story.
So this is 7.
So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7
So
is
this is 8.
8 is something involving the nature of particles. And then the 9th dimension is the quantum foam generating all possible and impossible universe types. So that's 9. That's God mind, stuff. That's Akashic record, bubbling in past and present, both directions.
10 is
10 is Atman.
So you're saying that there are 10 dimensions.
Well, with the 10th one being the one we can't see because it's us. We're the ones that are emanating all 9. You can't see your own reflection without looking in the puddle. And then you look like you're living and dying because of the ripples. So this is basically, they're all shaped differently. The thing they all have in common is they all have this pyramid, they all have the tables, they all have the doors, and they all have the malachite, they all have the cliff, they're all surrounded by water. The shape is different, the people are different. Clara's the same, she's the barista, but she has a different outfit and a different personality on each island. How many islands are there? About 8 septillion.
And this is in a podcast.
Yeah.
Which podcast is that again?
The Coffee House and Interdimensional Odyssey.
Which I must confess I haven't listened to.
There's only 3 episodes. My buddy Chris O'Malley, I told you about, my best buddy, he complains that I take too long in between episodes. But I'm telling him it's going to be a quality product. I'm not going to rush this shit. The Esoterinerd, I'm cranking them out like... But I'm not going to do that with my sci-fi, because I'm serious about my sci-fi. So yeah, this is an example. This is a 2-dimensional flat portal that you can walk through as a 4-dimensional being into 1 universe, 2 universe, 3 universe. But this one goes into another coffee house island. So you're coming from one of these islands to another island, almost just like it, but different. And so that's one way you can pass through the door. Another way is into a universe like this, and then another way is into some other whatever, 5D, 60, 70, 80. So you, my protagonist is going to have to learn. Now check this out. Gordon Beam, the one whose robe I have. I went over to his house and I read him the first chapter of my novel, and he loved it. And he was like, I love the idea of world creation, going in and out of worlds. And I said, but my problem is, how do I get Charles to go into other universe types with this body from this universe? And he's like, well, fuck it. You don't let MEST bring you down. MEST is a Scientology term, matter, energy, space, time. And don't get stuck in MEST. Just go. Just break out. Just create these worlds. Just do it. Just make it happen. And I was like, okay, you're right. I will. Thank you, Gordon. I love you. I gave him a hug. And then he sat down in his bed and he looked straight ahead. And the next morning he was dead. And so I feel like I inspired him to fucking go out the door.
It was his job to encourage you.
Yeah.
And once he accomplished that,
yeah,
he checked out.
And so, yeah, here's some more just drawings and ideas about it. This is the little boy that wandered in for the first time with his parents. This is his parents in the den. And that's his mom telling him about the coffee house. And then his dad puts his hand on the wall. The door starts to appear. The door's clear. His dad steps through. His mom steps through. The kid steps through. This is what it was like. He was terrified. His heart was racing. And then I got derailed and started getting into the Hanya Shingyo, that thing hanging over there. And then brain drugs to acquire. And then To Be a Yogi podcast. What does it do for the listener? I started asking really, what am I doing with this To Be a Yogi podcast? This is before I even thought to do an Esoterinerd podcast. And then put it together, and then made the mission statement, and started getting into Bitcoin, and what's this? Goal: everyone in the world to have perfect knowledge of how to safely and effectively practice yoga. That's it. The rest is blank.
We'll see where that goes.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely check out Coffee House and Interdimensional Odyssey. I think you'll like that a lot. And I got to get back on that. But I mean, honestly, I've been working on it since 1999. That what is now the podcast. So there's yantra. Tantra means web. Yantra means something else, right?
It's either, is it vehicle?
Yeah, or maybe. Yana is vehicle. Maybe yantra is also vehicle. Let's see.
What Jody likes to say, and she said it on her interview, is the yantra. Let's see. The mantra. No, the yantra is the vehicle, and the mantra is the gasoline.
Oh, right. Oh, I see. So the symbol that you focus on, it starts out explaining about the cross. The mandala. Okay, so the yantra isn't
a mandala.
It is a mandala.
Yes.
Oh.
It's not the word for it, as far as that's my understanding.
Oh, okay.
Well, this was a Canadian temple's newsletter that they would put out every month. The Imperator was a very great artist.
Well, thank you for joining us on the Esoterinerd podcast tonight.
It was my pleasure.
We'll talk to you soon. Wow. Did you really listen to that whole thing? Are you asleep? Did you fall asleep listening to that episode? I don't blame you. 3 hours and 45 minutes? Well, it's definitely a new record. Thank you to everybody who I should be thanking, and I'm gonna go to sleep. Good night.